The rain hammered the cobblestone streets of Hanoi, each drop a reminder of the night I was cast out. At 23, I stood shivering under a street lamp, my suitcase soaked, my heart heavier than the storm. My crime: refusing to marry a man I'd never met, a stranger my parents believed would secure their crumbling empire. I was Lynn, the youngest daughter of the Nguyen family, once revered as titans of Vietnam's textile industry. Our name adorned factories, charity galas, and whispered deals in Hanoi's elite circles. But beneath the polished surface, our fortune was rotting debts piled high, factories idled, and my parents' pride blinded them to the truth. They saw salvation in an arranged marriage to Tuan, heir to a rival conglomerate. I saw chains. "You're throwing away our legacy," my father roared that night, his voice echoing through our ancestral villa. My mother, ever the silent enforcer, stood beside him, her eyes cold as the jade bracelet on her wrist. I'd begged them to listen, to let me forge my own path. But tradition was their god, and I was the heretic. I left with nothing but a suitcase and a flicker of defiance. They thought they'd broken me, that I'd crawl back, pleading for forgiveness. They were wrong. The city swallowed me whole. Hanoi's neon lights and chaotic markets became my refuge. I found a cramped apartment above a noodle shop, the kind of place my parents would have scorned. The stench of fish sauce clung to the walls, but it was mine. I worked odd jobs tutoring kids, waitressing, even stitching clothes for a tailor who paid in cash and curses. Every night, I studied, poring over books on finance and business, determined to rebuild myself from the ashes of their rejection. Months turned into a year. I scraped by, my dreams fueled by spite and ambition. Then, one humid evening, a letter arrived, slipped under my door. The Nguyen family crest stared back at me, its gold-embossed dragon mocking my exile. I tore it open, expecting threats or demands. Instead, it was a plea. "Lynn, we need you." My mother's handwriting trembled. "The business is failing. Tuan's family has betrayed us. Come home." I laughed, a bitter sound that startled the stray cat outside my window. They'd cast me out for defying their arranged marriage, and now they were begging. The irony was delicious, but curiosity gnawed at me. What had happened to their precious empire? And why me? I returned to the villa under a sky bruised with clouds, my heart a battlefield of resentment and duty. The gates creaked, rusted from neglect. The gardens, once manicured, were wild with weeds. Inside, my parents looked smaller, their faces etched with desperation. My older brother, Min, stood in the corner, his usual arrogance replaced by a nervous tick in his jaw. "Lynn," my father began, his voice softer than I'd ever heard. "We were wrong." I crossed my arms, unmoved. "You disowned me. Why should I care?" My mother stepped forward, her jade bracelet gone, replaced by a plain silver band. "Tuan's family, they sabotaged us. They bought our debts, pressured our suppliers. We're bankrupt." I stared, the weight of their words sinking in. The Nguyen Empire, built over generations, was crumbling, and Tuan's family had orchestrated its fall. They'd planned to merge our businesses through my marriage. But when I refused, they turned predator. "We need your help," Min said, his voice tight. "You were always the smart one. You studied finance. You can fix this." I wanted to laugh again, to walk away and let them drown in their pride. But something stopped me, a flicker of memory, of my grandmother's stories about our family's rise, of the workers who'd toiled in our factories. They weren't just my parents' victims. They were mine too. I spent days digging through the wreckage of our accounts. The numbers were brutal, millions in debt, contracts voided, assets frozen. Tuan's family had played a ruthless game, leveraging their influence to choke our supply chain. But I saw cracks in their strategy over confidence, sloppy deals, and a trail of enemies they'd made along the way. I didn't sleep. I worked, fueled by coffee and a burning need to prove them wrong, not just Tuan's family, but my own. I reached out to old contacts, factory workers who'd been loyal to my grandmother, and even a few rival CEOs my parents had snubbed. Slowly, a plan formed. It was risky, borderline insane, but it could work. By the end of the week, I had a proposal. I stood in the villa's dining hall, facing my family, their eyes a mix of hope and skepticism. "We can save the business," I said, "but not by groveling. We fight back. We expose Tuan's family, rally their enemies, and rebuild from the ground up." My father frowned. "And if we fail?" "Then you lose everything," I said, unflinching. "But you're already there." For the first time, they listened. The battle began quietly. I met with suppliers in smoky tea houses, convincing them to trust us again. I tracked down former employees, offering them jobs if we pulled through. My nights were spent drafting letters, forging alliances, and studying Tuan's family's weaknesses. They were powerful, but their arrogance was a chink in their armor. One ally stood out, a former factory manager who'd been fired when my father prioritized profits over people. She was fierce, her eyes blazing with the same anger I'd felt. "I'll help," she said, "but only if you promise to do things differently." I nodded. No more dynasties. No more sacrifices. Together, we uncovered Tuan's family's dirty secrets: bribes, tax evasion, worker exploitation. I leaked the evidence to a journalist friend, and soon, whispers of scandal rippled through Hanoi's elite. The tide was turning, but the war was far from won. As I left Mai's apartment one night, my phone buzzed. It was Min. "They know," he said, his voice shaking. "Tuan's family. They're coming for you." I gripped the phone, my pulse racing. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy with threat. They'd underestimated me once. They wouldn't again. The threat hung over me like a storm cloud, but I refused to cower. Tuan's family, the mighty Hong clan, had built their empire on intimidation, but I'd learned to navigate Hanoi's shadows. If they were coming for me, I'd be ready. I moved fast, meeting Mai at a dingy cafe on the edge of the city. The air smelled of burnt coffee and motorbike exhaust, but it was a place where secrets could be traded. "They've got spies in our old factories," Mai whispered, sliding a crumpled note across the table. It listed names workers still loyal to my family, now feeding information to the Hongs. "They're watching our every move," I said, my fingers tightening around the note. "We need to hit them where it hurts." Mai's eyes gleamed. "Their new factory in Bac Ninh. It's their pride, but it's bleeding money. If we can prove they're cutting corners, it'll cripple their reputation." We spent the night plotting. Mai had contacts disgruntled workers, overlooked suppliers who could get us inside. I reached out to my journalist friend, Linon, who'd already stirred the pot with her exposé. She agreed to publish whatever we found, but warned me, "The Hongs don't forgive. Be careful, Lin." The Bac Ninh factory was a fortress of steel and glass, a monument to the Hong's ambition. Getting in wasn't easy. I posed as a quality inspector, my fake ID trembling in my hand as I passed security. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of machines and the sweat of overworked laborers. I saw it immediately: faulty equipment, ignored safety protocols, and workers too scared to speak. I snapped photos with my phone, my heart pounding as foreman barked orders nearby. One worker, a young woman with tired eyes, slipped me a ledger when no one was looking. "They faked their output numbers," she whispered. "Take this. Make them pay." Back in Hanoi, Mai and I pored over the ledger. It was a gold mine proof of inflated production stats. unpaid wages, and corners cut to save costs. Combined with my photos, it was enough to spark outrage. Lennon ran the story the next morning, and by noon, social media was ablaze. Hong scandal trended, and the Hong stock plummeted. But victory was short-lived. That night, my apartment was trashed, windows smashed, papers shredded. A note was pinned to my door, "Back off, or you're next." I didn't sleep. Fear gnawed at me, but anger burned hotter. I moved to a safe house I arranged, a cramped room above a tailor's shop. My family called, frantic, begging me to stop. "You're putting us all at risk," Min said, his voice tight with panic. "You asked me to save you." I snapped. "This is what it takes." I wasn't alone. I rallied the old factory workers, organizing protests outside the Hong's offices. Lennon kept the pressure on, publishing follow-ups that exposed more of their corruption. Slowly, we built a coalition, small suppliers, rival CEOs, even a government official who'd been burned by the Hong's bribes. But the Hongs fought back. They sued Lin On for defamation, froze our remaining accounts, and sent thugs to intimidate our allies. One night, Mai was followed home, her car nearly run off the road. She showed up at the safe house, her face pale but resolute. "They're scared," she said. "That means we're winning." I needed a bolder move. The Hong's annual gala was days away, a glitzy event where Hanoi's elite would fawn over their power. It was the perfect stage. I convinced Lennon to sneak me in as her +1, my heart racing as I slipped into a borrowed dress, my old life's glamour a distant memory. The gala was a sea of champagne and fake smiles. Tuan was there, his eyes scanning the room like a predator. When he saw me, his face twisted with recognition. "You're a fool, Lin," he hissed, cornering me near the bar. "You can't touch us." I smiled, my pulse steady. "Watch me." During the keynote speech, Lennon's team hacked the gala's projector. The screen flickered, and my photos from the Bac Ninh factory flashed across it. Child laborers, broken machines, forged documents. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the silence. "This is the Hong Empire," I said, "built on lies." Chaos erupted. Guests whispered, journalists scrambled, and Tuan's father stormed off the stage. I slipped out before security could grab me, my heart pounding with triumph and terror. The fallout was swift. The Hong's investors pulled out, their contracts canceled overnight. Protests grew, and the government launched an investigation. But I wasn't safe. The Hongs knew I was the spark, and they'd stop at nothing to crush me. As I hid in the safe house, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old quarter. Midnight. Come alone." I stared at the screen, my gut twisting. It was a trap, but it was also a chance. The Hongs were desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I grabbed my jacket, my resolve hardening. This wasn't just about saving my family's fortune anymore. It was about justice. The old quarter was alive with midnight chaos, street vendors hawking late-night pho, motorbikes weaving through narrow alleys, and the hum of secrets traded in the dark. I stood under a flickering lantern, my hoodie pulled low, every nerve on edge. The message had been clear: come alone. But I wasn't naive. I'd told Mai where I was going, and she'd promised to send help if I didn't check in by dawn. A figure emerged from the Shadowsa woman, late 40s, her face sharp and unreadable. It was Kim, Tuan's mother, the Hong family's silent strategist. "You're braver than I thought," she said, her voice low, almost admiring. "Or stupider." "What do you want?" I asked, my hands clenched in my pockets, one gripping a small recorder Mai had given me. Kim stepped closer, her silk dye catching the lantern's glow. "End this. Drop your campaign, and we'll let you live." We'll even pay you. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You think I'd sell out for your blood money? Her eyes narrowed. You're Nguyen. You know how this game is played. Your family's finished without us. Join us. Lin. Marry Tuan. Save your legacy. The offer hit like a slap, but I stood taller. I'd rather burn it all down than bow to you. Kim's face hardened, but before she could respond, headlights flared behind her. A black car screeched to a stop, and two men in suits stepped out. My heart lurched, but I held my ground. The recorder's still running. You'll regret this, Kim said, then vanished into the car as it sped away. I didn't sleep that night. The recorder had captured everything Kim's offer, her thinly veiled threat. It was another weapon, but a dangerous one. The Hongs were cornered, and cornered beasts lash out. I sent the audio to Lin On, who promised to use it sparingly, waiting for the right moment to maximize its impact. Back at the safe house, Mai and I planned our next move. The Hong's empire was cracking, but they still had allies, corrupt officials, loyal investors, and a network of informants. We needed to sever those ties. Mai suggested targeting their biggest investor, a Singaporean tycoon named Chun, who'd bankrolled their Backnan factory. He's pragmatic, she said. Show him the Hongs are toxic, and he'll jump ship. I spent days building a dossier, financial records, worker testimonies, and the gala's leaked photos. I flew to Singapore, my first time leaving Vietnam since my exile. Chin's office was a glass tower overlooking the marina, a world away from Hanoi's gritty streets. He was a wiry man with sharp eyes, unimpressed by my youth but intrigued by my audacity. Your evidence is compelling, he said, flipping through the dossier. But why should I trust a disgraced Nguyen? Because I'm not my parents, I said, and because you're losing millions on a sinking ship. Chen leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Prove the Hongs are done, and I'm out. Back in Hanoi, the Hongs escalated. They leaked a smear campaign, painting me as a vengeful runaway who'd fabricated lies to destroy them. My parents called, panicked, urging me to back off. They're dragging our name through the mud. My mother cried. This isn't worth it. It's worth everything, I said, hanging up. Their weakness only fueled me. I'd spent a year surviving on my own, clawing my way up from nothing. I wasn't stopping now. Lin On countered the smear with Kim's audio, carefully edited to protect my safety. The public outcry was deafening. Hong corruption trended higher than ever. Protests swelled outside their factories, and workers began striking. The Hong's allies started to waver, but Tuan himself remained untouchable, his charm deflecting scrutiny. I needed to confront him directly. Mai warned against it, but I was done hiding. I tracked him to a private club in Hanoi's upscale district, a place where the elite made deals over whiskey and cigars. Slipping in as a server, I spotted Tuan at a corner table, laughing with a group of investors. His confidence made my blood boil. I waited until he stepped outside for a cigarette, then approached. Enjoying your empire while it burns? I asked, my voice steady. He smirked, exhaling smoke. You're a pest, Lin. A nobody who thinks she's a hero. I'm the nobody who's going to bury you, I said, stepping closer. Your investors are abandoning you. Your workers hate you. And I've got proof of every dirty deal you've made. His smile faltered, just for a moment. You're playing a dangerous game. So are you, I said, turning away. As I walked back into the night, I felt his eyes boring into me, but I also felt something new power. The next morning, Chen called. I'm out, he said simply. The Hongs are finished. His withdrawal triggered a domino effect. Other investors followed, and the Hong stock tanked further. The government's investigation deepened, and rumors swirled of impending arrests. But the Hongs weren't done. A fire broke out at one of our old factories, now under their control. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. They'd burn everything before admitting defeat. Mai and I doubled down, rallying more workers and leaking evidence of the Hong's arson to Lin On. As the pressure mounted, my family began to fracture. Min, torn between loyalty and fear, begged me to negotiate with the Hongs. "They'll destroy us all," he said, his voice cracking. "They already tried," I said, "and I'm still standing." The fire's aftermath hung over Hanoi like smoke, a grim reminder of the Hong's desperation. I stood outside the charred remains of our old factory, the acrid smell stinging my nose. Workers milled about, their faces a mix of fear and defiance. They looked to me, the outcast turned unlikely leader, for answers I wasn't sure I had. Mai arrived, her expression grim. "The police suspect arson, but the Hongs have friends in high places. They're pinning it on a faulty wire." "We need more than suspicion," I said, my voice low. "We need proof." We dug deeper, combing through security footage and worker testimonies. A night guard, bribed into silence, cracked under Mai's relentless questioning. He'd seen a Hong enforcer near the factory hours before the fire. His shaky confession, recorded on my phone, was another nail in their coffin. Lin On published it, and the public's outrage grew louder. But the Hongs weren't finished. They launched a counterattack, suing our family for slander and freezing our remaining assets. My parents crumbled under the pressure, their pride replaced by despair. "We should have listened to you," my mother said, her voice hollow. "But it's too late." "It's never too late," I said, though doubt gnawed at me. The Hong's influence ran deep, and every victory we scored came at a cost. My safe house was no longer safe. I'd spotted a car tailing me twice in the past week. Mai insisted I move again, but I refused. Running felt like surrender. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I met with small suppliers, promising them equity in a revived Nguyen business if they stood with us. Many hesitated, burned by my parents' arrogance, but my grandmother's name still carried weight. She treated us like family, one supplier said, his eyes misty. "For her, I'll trust you." Slowly, we formed a coalition. Factory workers, suppliers, even a few disgruntled Hong employees joined us. I spent nights drafting a new business plan, not the bloated empire my parents had chased, but a lean, ethical operation focused on quality and fairness. Mai called it a revolution in textiles. I called it survival. The Hong's next move was personal. They targeted Min, leaking photos of him at a gambling den, painting him as a reckless addict. He showed up at my new hideout, a rented room above a bookstore, his face gaunt. "They're ruining me," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't take this." I wanted to scream at him, to remind him how he'd stood by while our parents threw me out. But his pain mirrored my betrayal by those we'd trusted. "Then fight," I said, handing him a stack of financial records. "Help me expose them." Min hesitated, then nodded. For the first time, we worked as equals, combing through the Hong's shady deals. We found a pattern: offshore accounts funneling money to shell companies. It was enough to draw the government's attention, but we needed a way to make it undeniable. I turned to an unlikely ally, Duc, a former Hong accountant who'd contacted me through Lin On. He was nervous, his hands shaking as we met in a crowded market. "I can get you their financials," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "But if they find out, I'm dead." "I'll protect you," I promised, though I wasn't sure how. Duc handed me a USB drive, his eyes pleading for trust. Back at the hideout, Min and I poured over the files, millions in laundered money, tied to Tuan's father. It was the smoking gun we needed. Lin On broke the story, and the fallout was seismic. The Hong's allies and government distanced themselves. and their remaining investors fled. Protests erupted outside their mansion, chants of justice echoing through Hanoi's streets. I watched from a rooftop, my heart pounding with a mix of triumph and dread. But triumph was fleeting. That night, I got a call from my. "They've got Lynn on," she said, her voice tight. "She's missing." My stomach dropped. Lennon had been my voice, my shield. I raced to her apartment, finding it trashed, her laptop gone. A note was taped to her fridge: "Stop, or she's next." I sank to the floor, fear clawing at me. Lennon was more than an ally, she was a friend. Someone who'd believed in me when my own family hadn't. I couldn't lose her, but I also couldn't stop. The Hongs were crumbling, and this was their last desperate play. I called my. "We end this now," I said. "No more hiding." She didn't argue. We had one final movie, a public confrontation at the Hongs shareholder meeting, where Tuan's father would face his investors. It was risky, but it was our only shot to save Lynn on and finish what I'd started. As I hung up, Min grabbed my arm. "I'm with you," he said, his eyes steady for the first time. "Let's take them down." Lynn On's disappearance lit a fire in me, hotter than any anger I'd felt before. Every second she was gone felt like a blade twisting in my gut. The Hongs had crossed a line, and I was done playing defense. The shareholder meeting was in 2 days. A glitzy affair at a Hanoi hotel where the Hongs would spin lies to save their empire. Min, and I spent every waking hour preparing. Duke's financials were our trump card, but we needed to show the world the Hong's true face. I tracked down a whistleblower, a former Hong driver who'd overheard Tuan's father ordering Lin On's abduction. His testimony, combined with Duke's files, could bury them. But the risk was enormous. The Hongs had eyes everywhere, and I was a marked woman. I insisted on hiring security, but I refused. "We can't trust anyone," I said. "This is our fight." We scoured Hanoi for leads on Lin On. A tip from a street vendor pointed us to an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts, a place the Hongs used for off-the-books deals. Min and I staked it out at dusk, hiding in a rusted van across the street. The warehouse was dark, but a single light flickered inside. My heart raced as we crept closer, avoiding the Hong's guards. Inside, we found Lin On tied to a chair, her face bruised but defiant. Relief flooded me, but there was no time for tears. Min cut her free while I kept watch, my pulse hammering as footsteps echoed outside. We slipped out through a back exit, Lin On leaning on me, her voice hoarse. "They wanted me to retract everything," she said. "I told them to go to hell." We got her to a safe house, where Mai was waiting. Lin On refused to rest, insisting on helping with the shareholder meeting. "They think they've silenced me," she said, her eyes blazing. "Let's show them they're wrong." The morning of the meeting, Hanoi buzzed with tension. Protesters gathered outside the hotel, their signs demanding justice. Inside, the Hong's shareholders mingled, unaware of the storm about to break. I slipped in with Min, posing as caterers, while Mai and Lin On waited outside, ready to leak our evidence to the press. Tuan's father took the stage, his voice smooth as he spun tales of growth and stability. I felt sick watching him, knowing what he'd done to Lin On, to our workers, to me. Min squeezed my hand, a silent reminder of our plan. As the Q&A began, I stood, my borrowed uniform itching against my skin. "Mr. Hong," I called out, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "How do you explain your offshore accounts and the abduction of a journalist?" The room froze. Tuan's father's smile faltered, his eyes locking onto mine. Before he could respond, Min activated a projector we'd rigged, displaying Duke's financials and the driver's recorded testimony. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Tuan's father stammered, his lies unraveling. Security lunged for us, But the shareholders' outrage drowned them out. "Explain this," one demanded, waving a printed slide. Others shouted, their trust shattered. Tuan's father fled the stage, his empire crumbling in real time. We didn't stop there. Lin unpublished the full story, backed by Duke's files and the driver's testimony. The government, under public pressure, arrested Tuan's father that night. Tuan vanished, rumored to have fled to Thailand. The Hong's factories shut down, their assets seized, their names synonymous with scandal. But victory came at a cost. The Nguyen business was still a husk, and my family's trust in me was fragile. My parents apologized, their voices thick with regret, but words couldn't erase the past. Min, though, had changed, worked beside me, no longer the spoiled heir, but a partner. We rebuilt slowly. I used my plan to revive the Nguyen brand, focusing on ethical production and fair wages. Suppliers returned, drawn by our transparency. Workers, inspired by our fight, poured their hearts into the factories. The first shipment of textiles small, but ours felt like a triumph. One night, as I stood on the villa's balcony, Hanoi's skyline glittering below, Mai joined me. "You did it," she said, her voice soft. "You saved them." "Not just them," I said, thinking of Lin On, the workers, myself. This was for all of us. The stars above were bright, unclouded by the storms of the past. I'd been cast out, betrayed, hunted, but I'd risen. The Hongs had tried to break me, and my family had doubted me. Yet here I was, standing taller than ever, ready to build a legacy on my own terms. The Nguyen Villa felt alive again, its halls no longer echoing with despair. Workers' laughter drifted from the reopened factory nearby, and the scent of jasmine bloomed in the restored gardens. But peace was fragile, and I knew better than to trust it. The Hong's fall had left a void in Hanoi's textile world, and vultures were circling. My parents, chastened by their failures, deferred to me now, their pride replaced by a quiet gratitude. Min, too, had shed his arrogance, spending days negotiating with suppliers and nights studying the business plan I drafted. "You're better at this than I ever was," he admitted one evening, a rare smile breaking through. I shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "We're not safe yet. The industry's watching us." The first challenge came swiftly. A rival company, sensing our vulnerability, undercut our prices, poaching clients we'd fought to win back. I met with our team, Min, and a handful of loyal workers in the villa's old boardroom. The air was thick with tension, but I refused to let fear take root. "We can't compete on price," I said, spreading out our financials. "But we can on quality and trust. People want brands they can believe in." I nodded. The Hong scandal's still fresh. If we market ourselves as ethical, transparent, we'll stand out. We launched a campaign, sharing stories of our workers, their families, their dreams. Lin On, recovered but still bruised, wrote a feature on our revival, calling it "A Phoenix Rising from Hanoi's Ashes." Social media buzzed, and orders trickled in, not enough to erase our debts, but enough to keep us alive. Then came the second blow. A government audit, spurred by the Hong's lingering allies, threatened to halt our operations. They claimed our factories violated labor laws, a blatant lie meant to cripple us. I spent days in stuffy offices, arguing with bureaucrats, my temper fraying. Mai kept me grounded, slipping me coffee and sharp advice. "They're testing you," she said. "Show them you're unbreakable." I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman who'd clashed with the Hongs before. She tore through the audit's accusations, proving they were fabricated. The government backed off, but the ordeal drained our resources. I lay awake at night, the weight of our survival pressing down. Was this what I'd fought for? A never-ending battle. Min found me one morning, staring at the villa's old family portrait. "You're carrying too much," he said. "Let me help." "You are helping," I said, my voice tight. "But this is my responsibility." "No," he said firmly. "It's ours." His words shifted something in me. I'd been fighting alone for so long, but I didn't have to. We divided tasks. Min handled suppliers. I oversaw production, and I focused on strategy. Together, we secured a loan from a sympathetic bank, using my grandmother's old factory as collateral. It was a gamble, but it gave us breathing room. Our next move was bold, a partnership with a European retailer looking for sustainable suppliers. I flew to Paris, my first time in a city so far from Hanoi's chaos. The retailer's CEO, a no-nonsense woman named Claire, grilled me for hours. "Why should I trust a company that almost collapsed?" she asked. "Because we've been to the edge and came back stronger," I said. "We're not just selling textiles. We're selling a promise to our workers, our customers, ourselves." Claire signed the contract. The deal was small, but it was a lifeline. Back in Hanoi, our factory hummed with purpose, workers staying late to meet deadlines. For the first time, I felt hope, not the desperate kind, but the kind that grows roots. Yet the Hong's shadow lingered. Rumors swirled that Tuan was back, hiding in Hanoi, plotting revenge. Late one night, I got a call from an unknown number. "You think you've won?" a voice hissed Tuan's. "This isn't over." I hung up, my hands shaking. Staying over at the villa, saw my face and grabbed my arm. "He's bluffing," she said. "He's got nothing left." But I wasn't so sure. Tuan was a snake, and snakes strike when you least expect. I doubled security at the factory and warned Lin on to stay vigilant. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready. I'd faced worse and survived. As dawn broke over Hanoi, I stood in the factory, watching workers sort vibrant fabrics. This was my legacy now, not the one my parents had forced on me, but the one I'd built. And I'd defend it with everything I had. Tuan's threat echoed in my mind, a dark promise that kept me awake as Hanoi slept. I stood on the villa's roof. The city's lights a patchwork of hope and danger below. The Nguyen business was clawing its way back, but one wrong move could send us tumbling into the abyss again. Mai and Min sensed my unease. At breakfast, Min pushed a plate of bun cha toward me, his attempt at normalcy. "We're stronger now," he said. "Tuan's alone. He can't touch us." "Don't underestimate him," I said, my voice sharp. "He's desperate, and that makes him dangerous." Mai leaned in, her eyes steady. "Then we stay one step ahead. What's your plan?" I didn't have one, not yet. But I knew we couldn't wait for Tuan to strike. We needed to end this, not just for our business, but for the workers, the suppliers, the legacy we were rebuilding. I called Lin on, who'd been lying low since her abduction. "I need you to dig," I said. "Find out where Tuan's hiding." She didn't hesitate. "Give me 2 days." Lin on worked fast. By the next evening, she had a lead. Tuan was holed up in a safe house in Hanoi's outskirts, funded by a loyal Hong ally who'd escaped the government's crackdown. "He's planning something," Lin on said over a secure call. My source saw crates could be weapons, could be documents. "He's not done." I gathered my men and our lawyer in the villa's boardroom. The air was heavy with the weight of what came next. "We confront him," I said, "but not with force. We expose him, publicly, and let the world finish him." Min frowned. "And if he's armed?" "Then we're careful," I said. "But we don't hide." Our plan was simple but risky. Lin on's source got us the safe house's address. We tipped off the police, but not before leaking Tuan's location to the press. If he was planning a comeback, we'd make sure the world was watching when he fell. The night of the confrontation was moonless, the air thick with humidity. Min, and I parked a block from the safe house, a nondescript building tucked behind a row of shuttered shops. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but we moved first, Lennon's camera crew trailing us for a live broadcast. If Tuan wanted a fight, he'd get one in the spotlight. We knocked, my heart pounding. Tuan opened the door, his face gaunt, his eyes wild. You, he spat, stepping back as cameras flashed. You're a disease, Lynn. And you're a coward, I said, my voice steady. Hiding while your family's empire burns. He lunged, but Min grabbed him, pinning him against the wall. The police arrived seconds later, cuffing Tuan as Lennon's crew captured every moment. Inside, they found crates of forged documents, his plan to frame us for his family's crimes. The broadcast went viral, and Tuan's last ally abandoned him. The fallout was swift. Tuan was arrested, his schemes exposed. The Hong's name, once a titan, was now a cautionary tale. Our business, though still fragile, grew stronger. The European deal expanded, and new clients sought us out, drawn by our story of resilience. Workers smiled again, their faith in us restored. My parents, humbled by their fall, began to change. My father joined the factory floor one day, learning the machines alongside workers he'd once ignored. My mother started a fund for employees' families, using her old jewelry to seed it. They weren't perfect, but they were trying. Min and I grew closer, no longer rivals, but partners. He took over operations, freeing me to focus on strategy. Mai became our head of production, her fierce loyalty the backbone of our revival. Lennon, hailed as a hero, wrote a book about our fight, dedicating it to the girl who refused to break. One evening, as I walked through Hanoi's old quarter, the city felt different, less hostile, more like home. I stopped at the noodle shop where I'd lived after my exile, its neon sign flickering. The owner, an old woman who'd once slipped me free meals, waved me in. You did good, Lynn, she said, handing me a bowl of pho. You made us proud. I smiled, the warmth of the broth chasing away the last of my doubts. I'd been cast out, betrayed, hunted, but I'd fought back. The Nguyen legacy wasn't what it had been, but it was something better, honest, resilient, mine. As I ate, my phone buzzed with a message from Claire, the European CEO, ready for round 2. I laughed, typing back, always. The stars above Hanoi shone brighter that night, a reminder that even the darkest storms pass. I defied an arranged marriage, rebuilt a fortune, and reclaimed my life. Whatever came next, I was ready.